Hello. In this last video for the module, we're going to continue factoring trinomials, but this time we're going to look at trinomials with the leading coefficient greater than 1. Now really we can deal with negative versions, but in this video we're going to focus on when a is greater than 1. So in the last video, what we were trying to do to factor trinomials is we found two numbers that multiplied to be the last coefficient and added to be the middle coefficient. And we're going to do almost exactly that this time. Except this time, we want to find two numbers that multiply to be the product of the first coefficient and last coefficient, in this case 4, and add to be the middle coefficient, in this case negative 5. So we'll do the same thing as last time. If I have two numbers that are multiplying to be positive and adding to be negative, I know they're both negative, and so I'll list them. Now that I've got them all, I'll add across, and I realize that I didn't even need to do the second pair. I had it at the very first one. Now again, I'm going to continually do all of the pairs every time, but you can stop once you find one that works. Now, this pair tells us how to break up the middle term. And we're going to do that exactly the same as last time. So we use the pair to break up the middle term. Now, we'll factor out the GCF. So we have x, which leaves us 2x minus 1. And we have negative 2, which leaves us 2x minus 1. So you want to be careful there. If you only factored out 2, your GCFs in this place would not have matched. These two factors, 2x minus 1, and it would have been negative 2x plus 1. They wouldn't have matched. We wouldn't have been able to factor. But since I pulled out negative 2, they do match. We can pull it out. And we're done. So factoring trinomials with the leading coefficient greater than 1 is not really that bad. If we're using the same method to break up the middle term, it goes almost exactly the same way. So let's look at another example, just to make sure nothing funny is going on. So again, I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to be 8 times 3, which is 24. And which add together to be negative 14. So, since they multiply to be positive, add to be negative, they're both going to be negative. And I'm just going to go ahead and write out my entire list. Negative 1, negative 24, negative 2, and negative 12, negative 3, negative 8, negative 4, negative 6, 5 is not a factor, and then we begin repeating. So this is all of them. So we start adding across. And I see that second pair was the one I wanted. And so that's how I'm going to break up this middle term. I'll have my 8x squared minus 2x minus 12x plus 3. I'll take out my GCF, which in this first pair is going to be 2x, and that'll leave 4x minus 1. Now again, I want my second pair to give me a 4x minus 1, so I'll take out the GCF negative 3, which leaves 4x minus 1 again. So I can now factor 4x minus 1 out of each term, which leaves 2x minus 3. And we're done, just as easy as it was before. So again, you want to find two numbers that multiply to be the product of the first and last coefficients and add to be the middle. So we'll do one more example. So in this last case, we've already started to get some big numbers. And what we might want to do is see if there's a GCF here. And there is. In this case, it's 3. And once we do that, we see we're working with a much smaller numbers in the trinomial. So for now, we're going to ignore that 3 that's on the outside. We know that'll come in at the very end, and we're just going to deal with the 7w squared minus 11w plus 4. So we'll find two numbers that can multiply to be 7 times 4, and that add to be negative 11. So again, multiply to be positive, add to be negative. They're both negative. And I just begin in order. And the other nice thing about going in order is I'm not going to forget anything, right? I can try that negative 3, but I can see that 3 doesn't go into 28. And then I can try 4. That goes in. 5 doesn't go in. 6 doesn't go in, so this is all of them. I know I've hit every single one. So now I start adding. And I've got my pair. So that 3 is just going to sit on the outside for now. And I have 7w squared minus 4w minus 7w plus 4. So just like before, now I'm going to go ahead and just give myself a lot of room here. So just like before, I want to take out the GCF, which is w, and that leaves me 7w minus 4. I want to take out the GCF for the second piece, which is just negative 1. Because again, when I do that, that'll leave me the 7w minus 4 that I want. So now I can take out that 7w minus 4 from each one. And what's left over is w minus 1. And that 3 on the outside just came along for the ride. So that's the most complicated version when we're trying to factor a trinomial with a leading coefficient greater than 1. So again, check first. See if you can pull out a greatest common factor at the very beginning. Otherwise, we're finding two numbers that multiply to be the product of the first and last coefficients, and then add to be the middle coefficient. And we use that to factor by grouping.